Silent Hill 2, the remake. I just beat it about 2 weeks ago, which is a bit unusual as normally I like to release these videos right after I beat a game. But with Silent Hill 2, I really had to take a step back and let everything settle a little bit because it deals with some very, very heavy topics. And it's a game that really leaves an impression on you after you beat it. But now that I've organized my thoughts, I think I'm ready to talk about Silent Hill 2. And in this review, we're going to talk about the following. We're going to go over the story, the gameplay, and the updated graphics and sound in the remake. But enough of the intro. Let's get ready to break some windows and suppress our traumas in some really unhealthy ways as we talk about one of the best horror games ever made. The first aspect I want to go over with Silent Hill 2 is the story of this game. And if you haven't completed it before, don't worry, there won't be any spoilers here. But the story is what really takes this game and showed me why it's considered such a legendary survival horror game. It really shocked me in so many ways, and I knew quite a bit going in. I've heard videos before kind of going over the themes, and even still, I was really caught off guard by some of the things that were happening and the revelations that were in this game. And just to set up the story, you play as James Sutherland, a widower who lost his wife about 3 years before the events of this game. The odd thing is that he's looking for her in Silent Hill because he received a letter from his dead wife. So obviously things are weird from the start, and that's pretty much the setup of the story, and it gets crazier from there. While the plot is great and it's very intriguing, I think the main aspect of what Silent Hill brings to the table and why people love this game so much and why I loved it so much, it's the themes that it deals with. It tackles a lot of things that I don't see in video games a lot, and not to give too much away, but the concepts of grief, abuse, bullying, and a whole bunch of other things as well. It's so human, it's so raw, and I think that is what kept me going. Like, I wanted to see what exactly happened. Why are people going through these things in Silent Hill? Because it gets effed up like right away. Its use of psychological horror, its themes, its cryptic way of explaining the story and what these characters are going through. It left such a huge impression on me after I completed the game for weeks. I was telling everyone, like, you got to play Silent Hill 2 to all my non-gamer friends. And yeah, I know a lot of people have beaten this game before. It's my first time ever completing it with the remake. I never beat the original. And wow, like, I understood right away. I'm like, okay, this is why Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the greatest games ever made. First things first, is Silent Hill 2, the remake, scary? And absolutely 100% hell yeah, it is. It is absolutely terrifying. A big aspect of this is the graphics and sound, which we'll get into here shortly. But gameplay wise, I played this with my headphones on in a dark room and running around these locations with these freaky monsters, creepy environments, looking around for the last piece of your puzzle, running around in circles because you're not sure where to go next. It is intense, and there were moments where I was playing this late at night and I was like, okay, I should probably stop playing because I'm freaking out right now and I'm not going to be able to sleep. It is the scariest game I've ever played. And there are other games that have maybe scarier moments that they start out really scary, but then you get used to it and it's not quite the same. Silent Hill 2 was scary from start to finish, and I loved it. It was sometimes overwhelming where I had to motivate myself to get through it, not because it wasn't fun, just because I was mentally exhausted from being so tense. Again, I love it, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love that feeling. It just was a lot to take on. So if you're not really into horror games, well, you know, Silent Hill might not be the game for you. Just with that constant tense atmosphere and random jump scares, it can be a lot for the heart to take. because some of the things I saw in this game were the most terrifying, sleep paralysis inducing things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, let's ignore that and get back on track. Let's get into the specifics of the gameplay. Now, there's not much there in terms of combat. James is a regular dude, not super experienced with guns. I don't know his background, but you don't really get many weapons. You have a melee weapon that's kind of your go-to. And yeah, expect to get messed up by some freaky creatures all the time. And I played it in the normal mode, so combat for me was pretty easy. I didn't know I should have probably played the hard mode because I ended up with like 40 of each like health item at the end of the game. So combat wise, not too difficult in the normal setting. Finding ammo was a bit more scarce than health items in the normal setting. I didn't find myself at 0 bullets too often, but it did happen a couple times. And aside from shooting and meleeing monsters to death, dodging is also a component of the combat, so you got to be very careful there because monsters will hit you hard and quick. So aside from that, the combat, not much to it, but I think it really hits what it was going for. You're not a super soldier, you're a regular dude, and I think it fits what the game is going for. Now, I played this on my PS5, and I think an important tip for people, I like to have my reticles, minimized as much as possible. So I did that. But also, one thing I didn't like, and this is more of a graphical thing, but when you get damaged, there's a red border that shows around the screen. And I wasn't a big fan of that because this game is beautiful. And I felt like that red border was just kind of annoying. And it took away from the experience a bit. So what I did is I made it so it just showed up on my controller, which was actually very immersive. I've never really done that before. A lot of games do it. I thought it was more of a gimmick. But with Silent Hill 2, I definitely recommend that. Show your health on the controller if you're playing on the PS5. Made the experience much better. Which leads me to talk about another aspect of the gameplay, which is a little radio that you get in the beginning. And the radio is so interesting because it essentially alarms you when there's enemies around. And it would kind of work against you sometimes because there'd be little bugs or something and it would just cause you to get in alert mode. But most of the time it helps you out, but just a big part of the gameplay and that atmosphere creates. But on the PS5, the sound of the radio plays through the controller, which was super freaky for me. I don't think a lot of people were a big fan of that, but for me, I thought it was just another little detail that added to the immersiveness of the experience. Now, of course, aside from the gameplay with the guns and the melee combat, another big aspect of Silent Hill and a lot of survival horror games are the puzzle elements and exploration. For the most part, the puzzles in this game make sense. They're pretty intuitive. Some of them left me scratching my head, but I enjoyed that aspect of the game very much. And exploring around Silent Hill when you're in the normal aspects of the town or where you get to the kind of hellish, freaky areas where essentially you're exploring the same areas. Like, for example, when you end up at a hospital, now you get to this other realm version of it where it's hellish and super disturbing. Really enjoyed those aspects of the game, and it really turns up the horror up to 11. Okay, now that we've discussed the story and the gameplay, let's talk about the presentation of this game. I think this game is absolutely gorgeous. And again, I never played the original, so compared to that, which I still think looks pretty damn good considering when it came out on the PS2, but the remake absolutely blows that out of the water. And again, for the most part, looks absolutely beautiful and stunning, and it really adds to that disturbing factor when you get to these hellish and creepy areas. Like, again, it's beautiful in its own terrible way, and the sound also complements the graphics beautifully. The sound in this game is so genius because that's what really, to me, adds to that fear factor here, where I was constantly tense because of the creepy noises and the ambience. Or sometimes the game would just have noises where there was actually nothing there and it's just messing with you. And again, I think what horror games and horror movies sometimes miss is the absence of things sometimes is scarier than what actually you've seen or expect, right? So I think that was genius. And again, this to me is the scariest game I've ever played, and the graphics and sound are, I think, the main reason why. Now, the graphics aren't perfect, and here's one thing for me is the glossiness of it. It would sometimes look like, it's an object that you could pick up or whatever. It just kind of looked weird at times. Again, a little nitpick, but for the most part, the game does look really, really good, and the sound complements it just perfectly. Because it's true, and I've never played a perfect video game. There's always something that could have been better, maybe a nitpick, or just something that I just didn't enjoy. And for me in this game, there's not many things, but two main things, and I brought it up. The glossiness of the graphics sometimes looks a little bit weird. The melee combat can sometimes be a little bit clunky. And the biggest thing for me with this game, and again, for the most part, the flow of exploration and gameplay is pretty good, but it's just a little too long. And from what I understand, it's longer than the original. So some of these sections really just carry on a little bit too long, and I wish to just cut them a little bit short. And that's it. Again, for me, Silent Hill 2, I've known about it for years. I know it's a legendary game, and I definitely understand why now after completing the remake. Silent Hill 2 was such a fun and terrifying experience, and I think it is one of the best video games of all time, one of the best survival horror games of all time. And while the gameplay and the graphics and sound are great, the story of this game and the themes and how well it portrays those things is some of the best I've ever seen any medium ever, from books, movies, whatever. So Silent Hill 2 deserves so much praise for that, and I will give Silent Hill 2 a perfect 10 out of 10. Like I've stated many times, I've never played the original, but from what I've been hearing from people who did, is that the remake absolutely honors the original and even improves on some aspects. So from my perspective, a must play. And if you're a fan of survival horror games, Silent Hill 2 is a game you have to have in your library. And with that, it concludes our review of Silent Hill 2. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe so you can catch future content. Again, appreciate you guys, and have a great day. Bye-bye.